Welcome to the Pro Design Builder Podcast, a show where professionals and entrepreneurs share their stories, strategies, and secrets to building a thriving business and a successful life. I'm Sam, your host, as we dive deep into the world of life experiences and entrepreneurship. Before we get started, just like to thank our sponsors. The Pro Design Builder is a coaching and consulting firm for real estate investors who want to build spec homes and multifamily units. The Pro Design Builder is not just about building a business, it's about building a vision and a life by design. Also, our other sponsor, the Nest Collab, which is a incubator for real estate investors who want to do more deals, whether it's creative finance, wholesaling, or house flipping. We have an expert in that particular arena. There'll be a link in the description, the Nest Collab. Also, we have a house flipping 101 boot camp on April 16th and 17th in Fort Lauderdale. It's a 2-day intensive for all things wholesaling, creative finance, house flipping. You name it, we're going to be covering it from A to Z. If you want to know more about that, make sure that you private message us, or there'll be also a link in the description for that boot camp. As you know, foster care is a mission that's near and dear to my heart, and the work in foster care is never over. I've had a number of kids through our home. I've adopted 2 kids, and I'm currently fostering now. If you ever feel led to give to our foster care initiative, there'll be a link in the description for that. Some of the things that we support strong family, strong unit. So if you could get an additional date night for a foster family, we think that adds value to the home. We also purchase beds for foster and adoptive kids. Anytime that there's a transition, a place to lay your head is always important. Also, we provide additional meals for foster families. I know I've benefited from this a lot. As the primary cook, when someone brings a meal, to us, and I don't have to scramble to feed 6 people, it's always a blessing to me. So these are the things that we've been lucky enough and blessed with that we want to continue to pass on to others. So if you want to support that mission work, we'll have a link in the description as well. Without further ado, just want to introduce my guest today, Brandon Middleton, special friend of mine. He's a real estate investor. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's specializes in creative finance, deal structure, and also private equity. So we wanted to get on the podcast today and talk a lot of shop, and then also kind of get to know who you are as well. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks for pushing me to get on, man. I appreciate it. I love what you're doing.
I'm constantly on you about burying your head a little bit. So I had to pull you out of the lab and make sure that you start using your voice that God has given you. So
yeah, it's easy to get stuck up here. And the last few years, it's been learning how to get right here.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
So you have a unique story for several reasons, and so I wanted to kind of dive into your story a little bit. Also, if you guys haven't already, hit like and subscribe. We want to continue to bring great content to you like this, and this helps the algorithm. So if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and also share this podcast. We'd like to start at the beginning and kind of get a background of who you are. So what were you like as a kid? How did you grow up? What was your family unit like? If you don't mind sharing.
Just had to laugh. What was I like as a kid? I just get a flashback, and yeah, I don't think I was a punk as a kid, but that's probably because of the way that I grew up in the household that I grew up in. I grew up in a broken home, and I always say it like everyone's got stuff. So I don't mean to like sound like a victim, but uh, I guess it's what it is. I come from as early as I can remember. My mom was married and divorced 3 times. Um, Grew up in battered women's shelters and going to like hidden meetings, because these women were literally like afraid for their life, and just saw some pretty traumatic stuff growing up. But thank God, my mom by the time I was uh, 9 or 10, she moved us out of Los Angeles, which already was a really bad area, um, and just bad environment. And it's a testament to you are what you surround yourself with. So just getting out of that environment, and she dropped us right in the middle of Missouri, uh, where we had 5 channels, no paved road, and acres and acres of nothing.
Hmm.
So I went from like city to spending 3 years there, but my mom didn't care what the cost was, moving schools and friends. She knew she wouldn't be able to get out of that relationship without literally like fleeing the state and making it impossible to find my brother and I. So from that point on, my mom never got married, never dated, never anything. She just devoted her life to um, just giving, being, whether she was a bus driver, which she did in Missouri, and just pouring into the kids. Um, Obviously given to my brother and I, but our house was almost like uh, after Missouri, when I was 12, we moved to the shoreline of Connecticut. So then I just went to like snobby, wealthy, New York summer homes
Hmm.
for my like high school years. And yeah, my mom just poured into kids, and our house was like a revolving door. Like our pantry was the neighborhood's pantry, and quite a few times we'd have runaways, people that kids that got out of like ran away from the like detention homes and
Hmm.
were hiding out in our house. And
Yeah.
yeah, that was my mom. My
That was
mom
your
was
mom.
like she was like she was like a, I don't know, a modern day Mother Teresa. Not
Yeah.
not literally, but like I say
How she
messy in the
how
most
she how
positive way.
how she showed up for others. You know.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
And I never,
it's
never, never forgot that.
no for that's amazing. I mean, you mentioned something about painting this picture and not wanting to sound like a victim. It does not make you a victim. I paint.
Right, right.
You've heard my story, and the pictures that I paint. I'm definitely no victim, but I've seen a
Right.
lot. We've experienced a lot, right? And then
Hmm.
from these experiences, you've also, grown a ton. You know,
Yeah.
so never want you to ever feel like kind of sharing these parts of you makes you feel that way, because that's just really not the case. And for me personally, for the longest time, I never shared anything about me, right? Up until 2021. And then now I share quite a bit about myself, and people are probably like, wow, how is he able to share it? And the reality is I already lived it, right? Living it was far harder than,
Oh,
talking about it.
for
And
sure.
you could definitely, relate to that sentiment.
Yeah. And it's because I think I give that disclaimer always as a habit, because growing up with adversity, naturally I said I was a punk because the friends that I related to the most, the people I hung out with, good, bad, or indifferent,
Mhm.
also came out of those environments, um, and then most of them didn't follow the same path that I did, and didn't have the same aspirations and I'd say like determination that people like my mother and my grandfather did. So eventually, I had to, change that environment.
Correct.
And I found myself in the right quote unquote business environments and healthier environments, but uh, around people that couldn't relate. So
Mhm.
when you start telling your story, because it's
Correct.
important to who you
Yep.
are,
Yep, yep, yep.
it's I think people's initial reaction is like pity or sorrow, or like, oh, another like rags to riches story, and it's not meant to be that. It's like what's the saying, um when people are flexing, it's like, I don't say this to impress you, but to
Mhm.
impress upon you,
Press
you
upon
know
you.
that, you know like, I know what it's like.
Yeah,
You're
no, no, no,
scared. You're scared to
exactly.
quit your job. You're
Yeah,
scared
there
of this, but
yeah.
I've been
It
scared
cre
too.
Yeah, it creates a level of relatability, and that's what I found. And the more that I'm able to share these parts of me, I tell people, and when I tell my story, I preface it by saying, I'm not gonna take you down Sesame Street. That's just not the street that I that I grew up on, right? But what it does is doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what room that I'm in, right? Whether I'm talking to um, contractor, builder, developers that are running, 8, 9 figure, businesses, 7, 8, um, 9 figure businesses. There's a relatability factor there, right? Whether it might be an exposure to life experiences that you just don't even know existed, or even seen, right? And that's where I think I've gained in value the most, is bringing that perspective to the table that people just haven't seen or encountered or even imagined was a thing.
Yeah.
You know, so it's definitely a great thing. So were there early signs as a kid of the path that you would head, or did you? Yeah.
Which path? Because I went down a lot of paths.
Well, you could tell me whichever path you want to go.
Were
Right.
there
So
early
so obviously
signs?
there's real estate, right? That's
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's the space we're in, right? So was there
yeah.
any early signs that you wanted to head down that way?
Um, I knew I wanted to do something big, um, meaningful, impactful. I had no idea what that was. And the statistic is 9 out of 10 businesses fail. So start 10, right? So I started all kinds of businesses. I'd say the early signs were just that I wasn't gonna go with the crowd. That was obvious. Um, and thank God for my mom and my grandfather and my brother Skittles. Yes, that's his name, Skittles. Yeah. Um, those three people poured into my life more than I think anybody can. And it was my mom telling me from the day I can remember. It didn't matter if we were, in a shelter, or she had just gotten, beat up, or if we were broke and living in Connecticut, like that one broke family on the street. Uh, didn't matter what age or time or situation, she would never ever tell me that I couldn't do something. I was flunking out of school. I was getting expelled for dumb stuff, and um, she never like judged me. And I mean, I hate to say it because God rest her soul. I I cussed at my mom. I was a normal, angry kid, didn't have a dad around. And the worst things, like, I could say to my parents or my mom, like, she was quick to forgive me, and she was quick to remind me of who she saw in me.
Mm-hmm.
And so anytime I was in any room or anywhere, it's like, it sounds cheesy, but I mean, your mom loves you, God loves you. You're just like,
Yeah.
my grandfather loves me. He believes in me. Then, hey, I really can't screw up because nobody
Yeah.
else compares.
No, for sure. I mean, having that support there in a non-judgmental, type of way. I remember just telling my wife my story for the first time, right? And I'm sharing these different parts of me, right? And what happens with a lot of people is I'm like, how much of me can I really be with this
Yeah.
person? Right. So
Right.
I would I would share I would share some stuff, and then I would just kind of watch her. Does she grimace? Does she
Right. Squirm.
lift the, yeah, squirm, lift the eyebrow? I'm like paying attention to all details because this is, like I said, it ain't Sesame Street. And she didn't. So I would just tell her a little bit more, and she did it. And then I would just tell her a little bit more, right? And in the end, after telling her all of my stuff, right? Because I'm like, if you're gonna be with me, you got to know my stuff, right? This is
Hmm.
where I've been. This is what I've seen. In the end, she very similar, never judged me, never. And she said to me, Sam, no one deserves to live like that. And I had never
Mm.
received that level of, compassion from somebody before. And I think
Hmm.
that was probably like at that point I probably started feeling like, hey, listen, I could probably do this. I could probably ride with
Mm.
this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so that feeling that you're describing, I could truly, relate to, what you describe in your mom. So that's important. Also, too, kids feel the safest around their mom, right? So they're the safest to be, you know, angry or upset or sad, or they know that mom's gonna be there for them and pick them up. And
Hmm.
that's what she did for you. So what would you say, who would you say had the biggest influence on you growing up? I assume that is your mom.
Yeah, really, it's all three of them.
Okay.
Yeah, it really is because I had a brother, although my blood brothers, either one I've still to this day never met on my dad's side.
Hmm.
And um, my brother and I, we had a I would say normal. He would probably say it's not normal, but I was the big brother and fighting, and yeah, we didn't have a good relationship. But
Hmm.
um, my brother Skit, I mean, since mm, I think we met when I was like just the summer before I was going into high school. So, like,
Hmm.
very character building, confusing, hard years for, I guess a kid.
Hmm.
And yeah, between him, kind of supporting me, we'll say, in the real world, and showing me life, we lived in Connecticut. We were an hour and a half from Brooklyn. We'd go like every weekend and just, get into all the trouble that you can, uh, right into that line,
Yeah.
as a teenager. I think when I got
Yeah.
arrested and had to go to court like right before I turned 18, and I got to use my youth offender get out of jail free card, and that was
Okay.
it.
Thank
I
goodness.
was
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
I was
Exactly.
done. I was never going to do anything illegal, bad, immoral ever at all whatsoever. Not
Yeah.
even dabble with it.
Yeah.
And so I got like a taste of what the whole rest of my life could be.
Mm-hmm.
and he's stuck by my side for all the way to the end. He's also a licensed GC, and my grandfather unfortunately is not here anymore. My mom died when I was 19, but the impact that they made on me was obviously the legacy. Like I still think of like the nest. After I had opened it like a year, I started to realize, oh my gosh, this is like when my mom worked for Youth and Family Services. She was like the director of the Far Side, which was this like after school program. It was like a rundown building that they converted to be like an after school place where we could just hang out and do homework or play pool, or like a safe place for kids to go after school. And my mom, to this day, people still talk about my mom. I haven't seen in 20 years, because of, they didn't have anybody, but, something she said to them, or a time when she was there for them, was like, that's community, that's family. That's something that I have a taste of. And then it went like all this time, like, I don't know, living for the gram or living the surface level, like just what people see from the outside. And yeah, that I've been chasing it ever since.
Yeah.
Just finally, in the last 4 or 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
really know that I stepped into it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. So, did you always want to be an entrepreneur, or when did that first happen to you? Because obviously, you said you started multiple different businesses, but when did you first get that itch for entrepreneurship?
Jeez. So the part of my story that I left out is, aside from uh, the abuse my mom was going through with her, with my stepdad, she injured her back at the grocery store, um, slipped 3 discs, and then wound up having all these health problems because they couldn't do surgery. So she just like literally slowly deteriorated from the time I was, I don't know, probably like 9 through 19, right? So I was constantly reminded not just of how broke we were, but of how worse our situation was getting and how little time I had left. Like, I would say she was abused by the healthcare system. This
Mm-hmm.
was during the opioid crisis and pain
Yeah.
management clinics.
Mm-hmm.
So I would watch my mom just constantly, you know, go to the people you're supposed to trust the most, and just get
Mm-hmm.
washed around because she didn't have money. She was just, we had our food stamps and our, EBT card and whatever healthcare you get when you're broke. And so in school, from the time, like from elementary school, she would make beef jerky. I would be selling my beef jerky at lunch at school.
Yeah.
Um, I would, I had no, no pride. So at lunch, especially when we moved to Connecticut, like I would ask everyone for $1, a quarter, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I made bank. Like it would add up.
Yeah, for
Then
sure.
you know, I always knew if I could find out what people wanted and what they
Mm-hmm.
valued, and just find a way to get it, then I could make money.
Yep, yep, yep.
And that was PlayStations and Xboxes out of my trunk. I was
Mm-hmm.
driving down south to buy fireworks or cartons of cigarettes,
Yeah.
But then
Mm-hmm.
when I hit the real world, I couldn't afford to stay in college
Mm-hmm.
and work. So I dropped out of college, like, I don't know, 3 classes before, um, getting my, I think, associates, and I was in a business management class, and the teacher didn't own a business, and I had already started mm, uh, like a web design marketing
Hmm.
business
Yep.
locally, and I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. I'm not learning more than I'm learning by actually just doing, like, imperfect action, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I just like stumbled around, and I always knew I had to do something more than the go work 30 years, get a gold watch.
For sure. For sure.
Like, I'm like, my
For
mom
sure.
is dying.
Uh-huh.
I need this fast,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, for
which is
sure. So my
good and
experience,
bad.
my experience was kind of funny. It was a couple experiences before I had my aha, right? First one is I would sell candy in school, right? I bought this bag of candy. I think it worked out to be like I think the math worked out. It was like 10 cents each, um, based on what the bag cost, and then I was selling it for like 25 cents, and I could, maybe get a little bit more depending on the type of candy that I got. And then I would come home, I'd count it with my mom, you know, and then but that was like my first like business experience, and then I knew exactly who to go to. I knew who had the money and who would spend it, and
Mm-hmm.
I was the candy kid. Right. So that was my first experience with business. And then my second experience before I had my aha, I didn't like this one. My mom made me do this one. My mom was a seamstress, and she would make these muumuus, right? So it's funny, my wife called me
She didn't call him Mumu, did she?
traveling muumuu salesman. That's what that's what my wife calls me. But
Oh.
I would go door to door. I'll knock on the door, find the females that this would probably target and fit, and I would sell muumuus. I sold a few muumuus in my day. So that was my second experience. Didn't like it.
That's funny.
But that's door knocking sales, right? That's
Oh yeah.
experience, right? And then the last one was I was lucky enough to go to private school uh as in high school, but one of the dads would be in the stands every practice, and I'm just looking at this guy. I'm just like, what does he do that he could be in the stands like every practice? Because I know what my dad got to do, and he got to be at work right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he ain't at the games. He ain't at the practices. There's a lot of things that he can't come to because he got to be over there at work, right? And then I asked this kid, and he was like, "My dad owns a business," right? And then what happened after that is I started asking everybody around me, "What does your dad do?" "My dad owns a business." "What does your dad do?" "My dad's an attorney." "Oh, what does your dad do?" "My dad owns a business." "What does your dad do?" "My dad's a physician." Right? "What does your dad do?" "My dad owns the business." Right? So right away, kind of gave me this aha, and I was like, I gotta be a business owner. I gotta be an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur. So once I got my chance to do that, I never looked back, just because although it's hard, right? When you go through certain things like you have and I have with life experience, some things don't look as hard. There's still no guarantee. There's no guarantee in life, but
Mm-hmm.
it makes taking those steps and of risk a little bit easier as a business owner, entrepreneur, right? So
I think that's one of the biggest blessings with adversity
correct.
is that there is no guarantee.
Correct.
No matter, so because the world does a really good job now more than ever of trying
Hmm.
to make you feel like your job is safe.
Hmm.
Nothing is safe about your job. I don't care
Yep.
how long you've been there.
Yep.
There's no safety in like anything but the union. And if you want a guaranteed, you know, God bless like the firemen and all that stuff because I
Hmm.
just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But just different strokes for different folks.
Mm-hmm.
But you said that, and like I didn't have an aha. I knew I needed to, sell candy or do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I graduated high school and moved out of the house, I moved to Florida, and I was out on my own day one, and quickly realized how fast my savings was not going to last.
Yep.
Worked 3 jobs, and once my grandfather, I was really going to college for him. Like,
Mm-hmm.
once he was like, look, this is what I would like, because he was a doctor of veterinary medicine, Stony Brook Research in New York. My grandmother, she was also anesthesiologist. So like they're all about academics.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandfather was like, yeah, you have to live with the consequences long after I'm gone. So whatever you really like know you're gonna be able to sleep at night, like that's what you have to do. I can't make the decisions for you. I was like, oh, well, geez, all right. So I when I dropped out of college, that's when I started just working the 3 jobs, taking the bus, working third shift, and one of those jobs led me to a car wash
Mm-hmm.
that I would work at after I got out of work at the cash and carry at like 8 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd work basically for the tips. And then they're selling your windshield if it was cracked.
Yep.
You could get the insurance to get a free windshield, and we would at the time give them like a $50 gift card to,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm paying attention to the guy who's sitting in his air conditioning car with a
Mm-hmm.
clipboard. Meanwhile, I'm sweating. I haven't slept all night,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm working for like $5 an hour.
Yep.
And this guy's, coming and going his
Chilling
places.
in his
Yeah,
AC.
chilling in
Yeah.
the AC.
Yeah.
He gets out for 5 minutes and asks someone if they want something for if he can pay them to give them a new windshield. And I'm like, oh, geez. So I wound up talking to that guy and getting that job.
Mm-hmm.
And then it wasn't too long before like the regional manager for a water softener company comes through in his BMW with like a chip like this small in his windshield.
Mm-hmm.
And I sold him,
Mm-hmm.
and he pitched me on
Selling
coming
water softener.
to do door-to-door sales.
Mm-hmm.
That was it for me. That was my aha, because it was the best, grueling, the best sales training
Yeah.
ever. And that's what led me to the a weekend training that was Jim Rohn, who said, The Richest Man in Babylon and Rich Dad Poor Dad, those 2 books.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, they're easy to read, but they're also easy not to read.
Yep.
And Rich Dad Poor Dad was everything. I mean,
Yeah.
it made me think, okay, I can't do business. I can't do without college and all that stuff, to wait a second. I don't got to work these 3 jobs. I can work smarter, not harder. Okay, asset, liability, the cash flow quadrant. I'm like, this is all plain English. I can understand this. And that's when I really just went, real estate and entrepreneurship is, I don't care if it takes me my whole life to figure it out. That's what I'm doing.
No, I completely agree with you. And, I tell my story a little bit. My wife was going to med school. She said that she didn't want to go. Looking back at it now, thank God that she made that decision. I was upset at the time. She handed me a Rich Dad Poor Dad book and said, let's look into this. And then as soon as I looked into it, it really spoke to me. It spoke to me in every part of my being, right? Of what would make sense, right? And similar to you, once you go through some challenges in the beginning, you know what you don't want it to look like, right? So then you're like, yeah, let me just work towards this thing so it could look like something very different for me, in the future, right? And that's what Rich Dad essentially kind of, did for me. So hopping into so, all right, you go to now you're selling water softeners, and now things are starting to change for you. And then what? What happens next?
After uh, a year of doing that, like I dropped out of college right the day I dropped out. It was because I was going into my public speaking class,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like scared to death. I mean,
Yeah.
I could talk one on one. And my first appointment was a complete stranger, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and they did not speak English. So
Okay.
I think I was being hazed or something. But it was so hard, but
Yeah.
there was a system to follow.
Uh-huh.
I had to memorize the script. I had the specific worksheets that I had took them through, and every single thing was intentional, and it was meant to lead them down the path of a logical decision
Mm-hmm.
that instead of buying bottled water and paying this, they for the same monthly payment, they could have a whole house system, and they were going to get all this free soap for like
Yep.
50 years.
Yep.
I made $5,000 in a week. And so every time I sold one, I would get $1,000 commission.
Mm-hmm.
And just the process of watching, because it's commission only door-to-door sales. So
Yep.
I watched and appreciated the system and the rinse and repeat, but I watched how many people in different walks of life it was a revolving door.
Mm-hmm.
And the few that would stay, and I'm going, you think this is hard?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This isn't hard. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to sell these for the rest of my life,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
what
But
I'm
yeah, but I
learning,
get it. Yeah, exactly.
I could sell anything that I believe in, right? Like this
Mm-hmm.
was simple. It's water. Um, Sorry, what was your question?
No, no, no. I was just talking
Oh,
about
what
your,
happened
your your
next?
experience. What happened next? Yeah, what happened next?
Um, Learning sales. Yeah, so it worked. The reality check is what I tell people they need, like when they come in and they're starting real estate. I'm like, I know we've got like T minus 90 days before, if that, like they need to get a check and see that it's real. So while it wasn't real estate, I got a check from the process that I knew would apply to anything. No matter what business we're in, we're in the people business. So I knew that, all right, I'm going to strangers' houses, sitting at their kitchen table, getting, what they say is a half hour turns into sometimes 3 hours of their time. And, they prepared me for all the objections, like get the first no. And then like, I already expected it. Right. But I already had like 10 more objection handling things. And I'm like, this makes sense. And these people really need this. Like we're the
Yeah.
49th worst water in the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you believe in what you're selling, you have a moral and ethical obligation to sell it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
sales has such a bad stigma,
Yep.
but you sold your wife, you sold your employer,
Correct.
we're always selling. And I guess we knew this, right? From the playground, basically,
Yep.
like you've got to figure out how um, to sell yourself. And when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, it was like, all right, it has to be real estate. Unfortunately, for the timing, that was like 2004. So by the time I had my credit and found a house, my grandfather saw the paper for Robert Allen's no money down, free weekend training. And he took me with him as a guest. And we got to the end of the training. And of course, they give you enough information. And then they're like, we're going to be back in 2 weeks to go into actually how to do it. It's $1,500. And I didn't hear anything else. And like I stood up and I'm like, all right, Grandpa, this was good. I got some notes. Let's go. 'Cause I didn't even have my car. I sold my car to pay for bills. And he was like, no, I want to do this. You know, I have some retirement and da da da. So he was going to do it for himself, but he's like, if you want to do it,
Yeah.
it's like 2 for 1. So
yeah, come on,
so I went.
It. Yeah,
I remember walking into the seminar, and at the time it was just, you know, it's kind of like 2021. Like everybody was making money. The room was packed, and I remember just being like, "Oh my gosh, there's other people there's this other type of learning where experts will teach you." I mean, this is before the internet and all these courses and all this stuff, right? So So yeah, I we went to that, and then next thing you know, I was I bought 2 houses because they gave anyone with a pulse money. I used all my own credit. I used all my own cash, and then the market turned, and that was my experience with real estate. Ending in 2 foreclosures, turned short sale, and I still knew how to sell though. And I still had my marketing business. So
did that make you take a step back when that happened? Obviously.
Oh, yeah. Because it wasn't gonna. I blew through all my credit and savings, and looking back, I wish I stuck it out. That's why I've stuck it out in this season. I'm very much excited about this time right now. But I didn't stick it out. I decided to just put active real estate investing on the shelf and just focus on marketing for real estate investing companies.
Yeah.
And so I took the knowledge from my other business and started to find out how these rooms are getting filled and who is paying for the training and how we got into the room and all that. And I created my marketing agency, turned into a specialized. We just specialized in real estate investor. I worked for 15 years on all the major,
big names.
The big names.
Anybody that is somebody in real estate, in the coaching space, and also just real estate in general, you did their back end marketing. All of their funnels, all of their course setup and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, and I got to learn a lot about the business, their portfolio business, their software or their special technique or tools or tricks. And I found that there's no secret. It really comes down to some fundamentals, and at the end of the day, you have to know sales and marketing. So fast forward 10 years, it's 2015. I had hit $1 million a year working from home with 2 virtual employees. I put over $500,000 in profit in the bank, and there was no end in sight. I could continue to do that if that's what I wanted, but I didn't. I wanted family.
Mm-hmm.
And I had family. I had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. And what I didn't have was any white space on my calendar. I didn't have time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Kids
Yep.
spell love. Time. I
And we
remember
know
the
how
first time I
important,
read that, I was like, now you tell me.
and we know how important that time element is. It's literally
Gosh.
everything, right? You can't trade that away. You can't get it back once it's gone, right? We all
Yeah.
have 24 hours in a day for a reason, and you hope that you get out of the day, right? And that's something
Yeah.
that, obviously I talk about and I share quite often, how important that is, to me. So, you didn't have any white space in your calendar, and you just felt like a shift needed to happen. So then what
Yeah. I built
happened?
a prison. I built golden handcuffs
Mm-hmm.
in a prison that I called a business because I had an EIN number,
Mm-hmm.
but I was anything but a business.
Yeah.
I was self-employed. I
Yeah.
built a job,
Yeah.
which is what most entrepreneurs don't realize until they're trying to get out of their business.
Mm-hmm.
So thankfully I started early, which I would recommend anybody do.
Yeah.
It's never too late. Just start.
Correct.
And I'm talking to my financial advisor and I'm going, all right, I've got all this cash, but I still only have 1 car, live way below our means, still rent a house. I have nothing except this cash. And I knew enough and was around enough wealthy people to know, like, you don't keep your money in cash, it goes backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Or it gets spent.
Yeah.
The $2,000 vacation starts turning into a $10,000 vacation, and 2 of them a year, and it
Yeah.
gets spent.
Mm-hmm.
So so I talked to my financial advisor. I'm like, this is a lot of money. Comes in every single month and it's growing. So I want to do this for like 1 or 2 more years. But by the time my kids are like, have memories, like I want to be free.
Yeah.
And I thought I could be. And he said, not with this business. He said, you're going to have to 5x your business, 5 times more of these demanding clients, 5 times
Mm-hmm.
more of these pretentious techie at the time, employees.
Yeah.
5 times more problems, 5 times, like, no way. There was,
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, if you just try and double, you're going to actually make less money next year because you're going to have to hire more people. So, like, you're at the sweet spot right now.
Mm-hmm.
So either do this for, the next 10 years, or take the cash from this business and invest it in another business. He's like, have you thought about real estate? All the people in real estate, and you've got all. I'm like, shut your mouth right now. I'm like, don't you know what happened to me in 2008?
Yeah.
I'm like, I do not want to smell the inside of a Home Depot. I get PTSD
Oh my
just walking
goodness.
into a Home Depot.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly. Exactly. It's funny.
But once that initially wore off,
Yeah,
I
it had
was
to wear
like,
off.
is there something else I could do? I don't know what else I could do. Yeah, that I have the support system, that I have specialized knowledge in, that like I don't want to start over from scratch
Correct.
doing, but I said, I sat down and I made an agreement. I would only spend my money on one thing, which was marketing, to generate leads and appointments. But I will not use my own credit, and I will not sacrifice again, this nice nest egg that I put in the bank. So I I I sent out like 1,500 mailers, like every 2 weeks for. I agree. Like anyone that starts a business should put a limit. So I set a budget. I said $5,000 a month for 6 months. So that's $30,000.
Yeah.
I'm willing to risk $30,000 to give this business or this investment a shot. And if I lose it all, I won't have any regrets, no regrets.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I, if I don't, here's my boundaries. I won't use my own cash or credit. So I sent those out, and I went out, 2:00 in the morning, putting out bandit signs on the weekends.
Yep.
My phone rang. I had a notebook that I would write the leads down in, nothing fancy. And I would answer the phone with the babies crying in the back seat. It didn't matter,
Yep.
I write the leads down, and then I call them sometimes, 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night when the kids are in bed, and
have a conversation.
Yeah, it wasn't. Within the first 30 days after the mailers hit, like I had more leads than I could kind of keep up with, right? And I left plenty of money on the table, I'm sure, but I didn't know. Similar to your story, I didn't have a title company though. I didn't have cash buyers. Again, I wasn't going to use my own cash or credit. I just wanted to prove the concept to myself.
Yeah.
And so I called up an investor that I had known of in that same market. And I said, I'm going to market in this county, and I know you're the biggest cash buyer. And so we could either be competitors or we could collaborate. I'm not greedy. But I don't have any of these resources. If you'll help me, if I can call you when I get stuck or when I get a deal. And to my surprise, being in a world where you charge, $25, $50, $100,000 for this type of coaching, mentoring, he was like, yeah, absolutely. Call me anytime. And he did. He answered the phone. He answered my texts. And within 30 days, I had plenty of leads. By day 90, it was $61,000, and I hadn't spent the other $5,000. So I was still only $5,000 in, and I had 61,000 to myself. That wasn't my half, and I know we were giving the stuff away.
Yeah, exactly.
If I had kept all that property just in that first year, I would have been happy. But yeah, like
I talk about that as one of my biggest mistakes. I was committed to being a house flipper, right? One of my biggest mistakes is we didn't hold. We were in position to hold either, but just to see, there was one property, I tell you, we flipped it, and this gave me one of the biggest learning lessons, right? We were over budget. Cindy and I pretty much did this whole house ourselves, physical labor. We would start at 9, end at 8, like every day. and some of the work wasn't perfect, and it reflected that in the sale, right? So then we got some of that work done over, and I just remember this property, we sold it for, I think it was like 365. It was a 2 bedroom, right? So the math didn't make sense but the area made sense, right? They the new owners, so the two things that happened, they put a new roof on it. It had the original cement roof, and then they dropped the pool. Only things they did, right? It resold, I think it was like 2022 or 2021 for 825, right? And on that flip, we sold it, and I think we only made like 10 grand just because we just needed to kind of just get rid of it, get it off our
Yeah.
books and stuff like that. Now, just imagine if you held that till 2021, what that would have looked like, right? So those are the type of stories that I have, and the benefits of holding compared to flipping. There's a tremendous amount of benefits there. So
That's why I love this season that we're in, and I've been waiting for it since the last correction. Because whether it was the 70-year-old veteran that I worked for, and his investment strategy, or it was, the guy in his prime, none of them use their own money. So,
yeah.
you say you weren't in position. I wasn't in position in 2008. And I'm going to argue that I wasn't in position in 2015 either, when my credit was 780 and my cash in the bank was, over $500,000. Like, I wasn't in position because I no longer subscribe to it takes money to make money.
Correct.
It takes resourcefulness, and the ability to solve people's problems. That's it.
Correct.
And so I focused on the types of properties after those, the initial like wholesaling experience. It was all about how do I buy to hold?
Buy and hold. Yeah.
And when I don't have to use my own cash or credit, there's an unlimited amount of properties that you can buy.
Correct.
In any market.
The thing is, I remember with you in 2020, I committed to being a lifelong learner. And, when I met you, I referenced a book, and it was the book, Who Not How. And when I got connected with you, it both kind of gave us goosebumps, right? Just because we both read the book and we understand the concept and, what that looks like, and finding the right who's, for the particular area. And what really kind of drew me to you is, you say you dropped out of college, early, blah blah blah. But then I was asking you about, the types of books that you're reading, and it was very impressive. It far surpassed what I was doing. I just kind of really started, consuming books. So how many books would you say you've read in your lifetime, right? Especially on subject matter you already,
So Rich Dad Poor Dad, I think actually was the second book, because Richest Man in Babylon is like this small. So I read that one first.
Yeah.
That was the first, outside of a Dr. Seuss.
Yeah.
That was the first book that I ever read. And so
Yeah.
I don't read nonfiction.
Yeah.
I got through high school without having to do any reading books. So all the books I have are all nonfiction, everything from sales, marketing, and real estate mindset. I would say I know just in my last Audible account was over 200 books, and then physical books, which I usually listen to, and if it's good enough, then I buy the paper book also.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's got to be up pretty darn close to 1,000,
Oh wow,
I'd say.
I didn't know
Yeah,
it was that
I
much,
mean,
but
it's certainly over 500.
yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah, probably
yeah.
somewhere
I think
between that.
when you had shared that with me, I was kind of like that kind of like blew me away because I had just I just started consuming books. I'm reading my little, I'm reading my little 30, 40 books a year now, but then
Well,
when I
that's a
heard that,
lot.
that is a lot. Yeah, but I'm but I went from nothing. Like I went from before
Oh,
2020,
gotcha.
I might have similar to you, maybe finished two books. And then once I got to 2020, I read my first book is Start With Why. And I
Oh,
grew
yeah,
from
Simon
there.
Sinek.
Yeah, exactly. And I grew from there. And then after that, I was like, what have I been doing the last, 30 years? Right. I've been sleepwalking. And then I just started like really consuming more books. Right. So that's just kind of where I'm at, right? And applying everything that I learned as quick as possible. So no, that's
A
that
disciplined doer.
you said what?
A disciplined doer.
Discipline discipline door, keep pushing the needle.
Yeah,
So
because you don't want to just consume.
no, you don't
That
want to just
that's a
consume.
lot of my library is just a lot of like searching, so that I didn't have to do.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
looking back now, I realize that I did too much of that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
why
I'm
I'm
not.
stuck here a lot of
Yeah,
times. So
that's
I
where
don't recommend you
that's where I'm constantly
read a
pulling
thousand
you out
books.
of. I'm like, you better get your head out of there. You better just get going.
Yeah.
So that's so we've teamed up together for the Nest collab, and we've launched a community house flipping, 101 Tampa and South Florida, where we are diving deep into strategies that actually work, especially coming into this next phase in the marketplace. We've been paying attention to it for a very long time, and discussing how to do more deals, especially in a tight suffocating market like this, right? There's going to be massive opportunities. So I want you to kind of speak a little bit about the Nest collab.
And that's collab. So I don't want people to get confused with, I keep like narrowing down what it is, because we're not just like, oh, make money in real estate. There's a million people that teach you that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Nest collab, like I said, is kind of like the Far Side was with my mom. Like it is, if you know that you can't, everything you want in life, you get from other people. So you've got to be, you got to find your people, and you've got to be good with people. You got to be able to trust. And that is just hard with the flood of information and scrolling and distractions that we have today. So when COVID hit, I either got the biggest blessing and epiphany, or the biggest, like, I'm the crazy person, because while everyone was running home to work virtually, I was buying a $4 million commercial office building and hosting meetings. And
Mm-hmm.
we turned it into an incubator, a co-working space, because like I said, when I first started alone, I made all the mistakes. But then, and I had all the time, money, and credit. But when I started again in 2015, I had community.
Mm-hmm.
And that community was virtual, a lot of it, most of it. But the one person that helped me was in my backyard. He was literally able to drive and meet me at a property. He was sending it to his buyers list, who were all people in that area, not his ginormous general. Like, people overcomplicate this business.
Mm-hmm.
So Nest Collab is all about taking that spirit of, whether it's my mom or my good friend Dolmar, who, wound up being one of my first mentors, of just like, here's all the information,
Yeah.
all the resources, all the tools. You pay to be a part of the community, and you get the event space, the co-work space, the podcast room, the vault of every legal document, script. We'll give you everything
Mm-hmm.
to set you up for success,
For
because
sure.
we're not in the business of publishing.
Yeah.
We're not in the business of make money for information. We're
Yep.
in the real estate business. We're in the family business, homes that are either dream homes for some people, or
Mm-hmm.
homes that people are trying to save,
Correct.
or a vehicle for someone to get out of their dead end job or career or whatever, and be able to, actually live a life. And like, real estate's done so much for my life and so many people around me. I've seen, in not my opinion, it's the last, like, true, like, freedom that we have.
Mm-hmm.
America is built on the backs of small business owners, and we've been the land of opportunity because you could come here and start a business. But
Yep.
capitalism is out of control
Mm-hmm. It
today,
is.
right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no more like mom and pop shops.
Yep.
It's
Yep. Yep.
all big,
Large
right? So
conglomerates. Yeah.
if you want to start a new business, I say, whether you like real estate, don't like real estate, I wouldn't say it's my passion, necessarily. Like, people are my passion, right? The family, community, that's my passion, but um it's not my thing, but it's the thing that got me to my thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're an artist or a musician or whatever, I don't think people really understand that whatever you do for the next 5 years, if you compare that maybe, or that guaranteed job and saving X amount a year for 5 years, you
Mm-hmm.
compare that to what you can do in 5 years with just looking for 2 houses a year.
Yep.
2 houses that you could buy. You literally say no to everything else except for these two houses, and that's your quota for the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
If you buy 2 houses creatively, or with a credit partner or whatever, or if you have great W-2 income and you can just get a cheap loan and it cash flows,
Mm-hmm.
2 houses a year for 5 years. Let's say each one of them spits off $500 a month. I mean, it's generous, but we'll just say
Mm-hmm.
$500 a month. After 10 years, you've got 10, or after 5 years, you've got 10 properties. It's not $5,000, or it's not, how much is that? 500 times
It's
10.
5,000 a month if you have
Yeah.
10 properties. But then,
Right. But by year 2, rent's gone up on the first 2 houses. Rent goes up and home price appreciation goes up, and your tax write-offs go up. So fast forward in 5 years, if you bought 10 $300,000 average houses, not only do you have $5,000 a month coming in before you even wipe the crust out of your eyes in the morning, that's only growing. And you now control what's that portfolio worth? Over 3 million.
Yeah.
I mean, in the state of Florida, especially, I mean, our home price appreciation is
Especially, yeah.
significantly more than 5% a year. So, you know, people might be like, well, but all that debt, I owe millions in debt. Well, who's paying for the debt?
Mm-hmm.
Your tenants. Your tenants are paying the mortgage. That's why you have that extra profit every month. So it's basically on autopilot. I mean, you know, you have property management and things that come up, but
Mm-hmm.
again, out of 365 days, you're just looking for 2 houses that you could even buy from a wholesaler.
Mm-hmm.
What else can you do where you have to basically put out essentially no money and do 2 things all year, and in 5 years, you have a multi-million-dollar portfolio and a stream of income that is just continuing to grow every year?
It's not a
Nothing.
lot of it. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so it's the great equalizer. Is what I like. I can look a homeless person in the face to, you know, a high school dropout. Anybody can do this business, and that's one thing I didn't have in my I don't know, maybe it's guilt
Mm-hmm.
that I had in my agency, because I knew no matter how much I made,
Yeah.
that only helped my home. I couldn't help my neighbor.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And as soon as I got into real estate, that first year, I helped literally my neighbor on one side was a director at a school. He quit and he was making a good 6 figures.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one down the street was a cop who was retiring.
Yeah.
And they're both killing it in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be able to help, you know, our community. All right. Rising tide raises all ships. So
For sure. For sure. For sure. So just wanted to say thank you for coming on, and you're going to come on a lot more. Right. So we're going to be talking real estate, you know, more and more and more. We're hosting a house flipping boot camp April 16th and 17th in Fort Lauderdale. If you want to inquire about our boot camp, DM us or you know, comment, and we will message you about the details for that boot camp.
just get
Just wanted to tell you.
connected.
You said what?
Just get connected. I guess that's what the long version of everything I've tried to say is like the nest and everything. It's all about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rare to find people like you, even that have pure motives.
Yeah.
You know,
for sure.
who have
For
that
sure.
specialized knowledge and who are genuinely willing to help and are in your backyard. So it's not about, you know, the special sauce that we have. The special sauce is like attracts like, and we just want to work with people who have that go-giver mentality and who aren't greedy and who, you know, want to help out their family and their community.
No, for sure. No, absolutely. All right. Tell you thank you for hopping on with me. I think this is a good exercise.
We went over time.
This is a good exercise for you.
Yeah.
We'll hop on and we'll talk more about, you know, real estate deals, real estate transactions, and thank you for hopping on the Pro Design Builder. It's not just about building a business; it's about building a vision and a life by design. Have a good day.
Thanks.